What if one decision had changed the fate of the 20th century? What if America never embargoed Japan? No sanctions, no oil cuts, no confrontation across the Pacific. Would Japan still have attacked Pearl Harbor? Would it have conquered China, and after that turned north toward the Soviet Union? History is a fragile web of choices. And in 1941, a single choice could have altered the course of the entire world. The year is 1941. The world is already at war. Germany marches through Europe. The Soviet Union bleeds on the Eastern Front. And in Asia, Japan stands at a crossroads. For years, its armies have fought a brutal war in China. Cities like Nanjing and Shanghai lie under occupation. Yet victory remains elusive. China resists. Supplies run low. Japan's military machine is stretched to its limits. Then, in July 1941, the United States, Britain, and the Netherlands freeze Japanese assets and cut off vital oil supplies. The embargo leaves Japan desperate. Without oil, its empire cannot survive. That desperation leads to Pearl Harbor and plunges America into war. But imagine this. What if the embargo never happened? What if the oil kept flowing and Japan never felt cornered? The world without an embargo. In this alternate world, Japan continues to receive oil, steel, and raw materials from the United States. Its navy remains strong. Its industry never slows. There is no sudden confrontation with Washington, no attack on Pearl Harbor. Instead, Japan continues its campaign in China, stronger, richer, and more determined. Free from the fear of running out of oil, Japan can focus entirely on crushing Chinese resistance. The nationalist government of Chiang Kai-shek begins to crumble under pressure. The communists retreat deeper inland, cut off from outside support. By 1943, Japan could achieve what it failed to in reality: complete domination of China. The fall of China would be one of the greatest shifts in modern history. A unified, resource-rich empire stretching from the Pacific coast to the Asian interior. The triumph in China. With China subdued, Japan would finally achieve the goal it had pursued for decades: the creation of the Greater East Asia Co-Prosperity Sphere. Factories in Shanghai and Nanjing would power the empire's economy. The Chinese population would become a vast labor force for Japan's industries. Coal from Manchuria, minerals from Yunnan, and grain from the Yangtze Valley would feed Tokyo's ambitions. Japan would no longer depend on trade with Western nations. It would be self-sufficient, confident, powerful, and unstoppable. But Japan's expansionist vision wouldn't end with China. Its generals had long debated the northern option, an invasion of the Soviet Union. And now, with its southern flank secure and its fuel tanks full, Japan could finally turn north. The northern question in our history. Japan avoided war with the Soviet Union after its defeat at Khalkhin Gol in 1939. But in this alternate timeline, things unfold differently. With China conquered and resources secured, Japan would rebuild its confidence. It would remember the humiliation at the Soviet border and plan revenge. By 1943, the Soviet Union is fighting desperately against Germany in the West. Millions of troops are tied down at Stalingrad and Kursk. A Japanese attack from the east at that moment could shatter Soviet defenses completely. The Red Army would be forced to fight on two massive fronts, west and east, and stretching from Europe to the Pacific. If Moscow fell, the Soviet Union might collapse. Stalin could be overthrown or killed, and the result? A divided world, Nazi Germany dominating Europe, and Imperial Japan ruling Asia. The Axis dream would become reality. America watches across the Pacific. The United States remains neutral. Without Pearl Harbor, there is no public outrage, no call to arms. President Roosevelt continues to support Britain through Lend-Lease, but the American people have little desire for another global. Brutal isolationism remains the mood of the nation. Our reports of atrocities in China and Soviet pleas for help reach Washington, but they do not trigger intervention. By the time the United States recognizes the scale of the threat, it faces a world already transformed. Germany, victorious in Europe, Japan ascendant in Asia, Soviet Union divided or destroyed. The Pacific becomes a frontier between democracy and empire. The age of American dominance never begins. EU of the dominoes. Fall Japan's success in China and Siberia would not bring peace, only ambition. With its empire secure, Japan would eventually turn south toward Southeast Asia, seeking control over the Dutch East Indies, British Malaya, and perhaps even the Indian Ocean. But now, these conquests would come from a position of overwhelming strength, not desperation. Without the early war against the United States, Japan would have years to build its navy, expand its air power, and perfect its technology. By the mid-1940s, its empire could stretch from northern China to Indonesia. The Pacific would become a Japanese lake. Meanwhile, in Europe, Hitler's Germany would rule from the Atlantic to the Urals. The two Axis powers, one by land, one by sea, would divide the world between them. The consequences: this alternate victory would reshape the global order. In Asia, Japanese rule would bring economic exploitation and cultural suppression. Millions of Chinese, Koreans, and Southeast Asians would live under imperial control. Freedom movements and resistance networks would emerge, but without external support, they would struggle to survive. The idea of a free, independent China would vanish from the 20th century, and for Japan itself, success might sow the seeds of its downfall. Empires built on fear and conquest eventually faced rebellion. Over time, the weight of occupation, resistance, and internal dissent would begin to crack the empire from within. Without America's intervention, the Second World War might not have ended in 1945. It could have become a prolonged, grinding empire war, stretching across decades, engulfing continents, and reshaping human history beyond recognition. Comparison with real history, in our real timeline, the embargo changed everything. It cornered Japan, forcing its leaders into a desperate decision: the attack on Pearl Harbor. That single act brought the United States into the war, united the Allies, and sealed the fate of both Japan and Germany. The embargo's purpose had been to restrain aggression, yet it became the spark that ignited total war. Still, it was also the decision that ultimately broke the Axis powers. Without it, the balance of power might never have shifted. The world we live in, democratic Japan, independent China, and a powerful United States, might not exist. The embargo may have started a terrible war, but it also prevented an even darker empire from ruling half the earth. Conclusion. So what if America never embargoed Japan? There might have been no Pearl Harbor, no Pacific War, no Hiroshima. But in the silence of that peace, an empire would have risen unchallenged. Sometimes, history's most violent moments are the price of preventing something far worse. The oil embargo of 1941 did not just provoke war. It preserved the balance of freedom. Was a decision that burned the world, yes. But it also stopped the light of liberty from being extinguished forever. Closing reflection. History turns on choices. Quiet, bureaucratic choices that ripple through time. In another timeline, the rising sun flag flies over Asia, and the map of the modern world is unrecognizable. But in this one, we live in the world born from that confrontation. A world shaped by resistance, sacrifice, and the lessons of power. What if America had chosen differently? And more importantly, what choices today will decide the world of tomorrow? If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to our channel for more thought-provoking what-if histories. And if you have your own question, your own what-if, let us know in the comments below. Your support gives us the strength to keep rewriting history.